This is part two of Number the Stars. The last one, part one, was mostly about previewing and warming up your brain. You do the same thing with music. You warm up your fingers before you play your trumpet. You warm up your voice before you start to sing. And we have to do that with reading also, especially if it's difficult reading or something that we're not familiar with. So to review a little bit, and this is another technique for reading to help you remember what you've read. We have a couple of characters already. We have three girls. The first one is Anna Maria. The second one is Ellen. And the third one is Kirsten. Which one is on the cover of the book? Yes, that's Anna Marie, because she's blonde and tall and thin. Ellen, if you recall, is shorter and maybe a little bit chubby. And Kirsten is only 5 years old, and she has curly hair, and she is just full of life. We also know that this takes place not in today. It takes place during World War II, and it does not take place in the United States. Do you remember where it takes place? What country? In Denmark. Now, I don't know if you know where Denmark is. I have a little map here that I made, and I'm going to stand up and get closer to the camera. And this green place right here is Denmark. And you can see how much smaller it is than the other countries around it. It's a very small country. So how small is Denmark? Well, one of the ways I use to determine the size of a country is I check to see how it compares to a state. And here is how it compares to the state of Missouri. You can see it's the dark purple. It's very much smaller than Missouri is. So it's a small country, and that's going to be important in what we are reading today, is to remember that Denmark is a very small country. So the girls were running in the street, and they were stopped by some German soldiers. And really, it was kind of no big deal. And yet the girls were very afraid. So let's read, and we're going to be beginning on page 6 of this book. "Are you going to tell your mother?" Ellen asked. Anna Marie, as they trudged together up the stairs. "I'm not. My mother would be upset." "No, I won't either. Mama would probably scold me for running in the street." She said goodbye to Ellen on the second floor, where Ellen lived, and continued on to the third, practicing in her mind a cheerful greeting for her mother, a smile, a description of today's spelling test in which she had done well, but she was too late. Kirsty had gotten there first. And he poked Anna Marie's book bag with his gun, and then he grabbed my hair. Kirsty was chattering as she took off her sweater in the center of the apartment living room. But I wasn't scared. Anna Marie was, and Ellen too, but not me. Mrs. Johansson rose quickly from the chair by the window where she'd been sitting. Mrs. Rosen, Ellen's mother, was there too, in the opposite chair. They'd been having coffee together, as they did many afternoons. Of course, it wasn't really coffee, though the mother still called it that, having coffee. There had been no real coffee in Copenhagen since the beginning of the Nazi occupation. Not even any real tea. The mother sipped hot water flavored with herbs. "Anna Marie, what happened? What is Kirsty talking about?" her mother asked anxiously. "Where's Ellen?" Mrs. Rosen had a frightened look. "Ellen's in your apartment. She didn't realize you were here," Anna Marie explained. "Don't worry, it wasn't anything. It was the two soldiers who stand on the corner of Osterbrogade. You've seen them. You know, the tall one with the long neck, the one that looks like a silly giraffe." She told her mother and Mrs. Rosen of the incident, trying to make it sound humorous and unimportant, but their uneasy looks didn't change. "I slapped his hand and shouted at him," Kirsty announced importantly. "No, she didn't, Mama," Anna Maria assured her mother. "She's exaggerating, as she always does." Does that sound like siblings? Mrs. Johansson moved to the window and looked down the street below. The Copenhagen neighborhood was quiet. It looked the same as always. People coming and going from the shops, children at play, the soldiers on the corner. She spoke in a low voice to Ellen's mother. "They must be edgy because of the latest resistance incidents. Did you read in Die Frie Danske about the bombing in Hillerød and Nordborough?" Whoa. In that little paragraph, I have a lot of questions. First is, why are the mothers so concerned? Second of all, resistance incidents. What is a resistance incident? And third, she talks about a place, and it's in italics, so I know it is a book or a newspaper, Die Frie Danske. Now, because I speak German, and I don't know if you remember I said, Danish is kind of between German and English. So it's very similar to English and very similar to German. And it's spelled F-R-I-E, free. The English word free is F-R-E-E, and the German word for free is F-R-E-I. So I think that this means the free, but I'm not sure what Danske is. So I'll continue reading and maybe they'll tell me. Although she pretended to be absorbed in unpacking her school books, Anna Marie listened and she knew what her mother was referring to. Die Frie Danske, or the Free Danes, was an illegal newspaper Peter Nielsen brought to them occasionally, carefully folded and hidden among ordinary books and papers. And Mama always burned it after she and Papa had read it. But Anna Marie heard Mama and Papa talk, sometimes at night, about the news they received that way. News of sabotage against the Nazis, bombs hidden and exploded in the factories that produced war materials, and industrial railroad lines damaged so that the goods couldn't be transported. And she knew what resistance meant. Papa had explained when she overheard the word and asked. The resistance fighters were Danish people, no one knew who, because they were very secret, who were determined to bring harm to the Nazis however they could. They damaged the German trucks and cars and bombed their factories. They were very brave. Sometimes they were caught and killed. So I was right about the word free, and Danske means Danes, and so it's a newspaper that's illegal, and we know it's very illegal because Mom does what with the newspaper when they're done? She burns it. So that no one knows that they had it. Plus, Peter hides it to bring it into them in other books. And what are some examples of what things that the resistance movement does, the resistance people? Well, they bomb factories, and they try to hurt the Nazis, and they damage the railroad so that, goods like food or like weapons can't get to the Nazis. Okay, let's continue with the story. "I must go and speak to Ellen," Mrs. Rosen said, moving toward the door. "You girls, walk a different way to school tomorrow. Promise me, Anna Marie, and Ellen will promise too." "Oh, we will, Mrs. Rosen, but what does it matter? There are Germans on every corner." "Oh, they will remember faces," Mrs. Rosen said, turning in the doorway to the hall. "It is important to be one of the crowd, always. Be one of many. Be sure that they never have reason to remember your face." She disappeared into the hall and closed the door behind her. He'll remember my face, Mama, Kirsty announced happily, because he said I look like his daughter. He said I was pretty. If he has such a pretty little girl, why doesn't he go back to her like a good father? Mrs. Johansson murmured, stroking Kirsty's cheek. Why doesn't he go back to his own country? Mama, is there anything to eat? Anna Marie asked, hoping to take her mother's mind away from the soldiers. Oh, take some bread and give a piece to your sister. With butter? Kirsty said hopefully. No butter, her mother replied. You know that. Kirsty sighed as Anna Marie went to the bread box in the kitchen. Oh, I wish I had a cupcake, she said. A big yellow cupcake with pink icing. Her mother laughed. For a little girl, you have a long memory, she told Kirsty. There hasn't been any butter or sugar for cupcakes for a long time, a year at least. When will there be cupcakes again? When the war ends, Mrs. Johansson said. She glanced through the window, down the street where the soldiers stood, their faces impassive beneath the metal helmets when the soldiers leave. When the soldiers leave. So the name of this chapter was, Why Are You Running? So why were the girls running? Do you remember why? Were they running away from the soldiers? Or were they running just for fun? Or were they practicing for a race? They were mostly running for fun, but they were also practicing for a race. Okay, chapter 2 starts with another question. Who is the man who rides past? Rides past on a bicycle? Rides past in his car? Who is the man that rides past? What are some other ways that a man could ride past? Well, we'll find out. Tell me a story, Anna Marie, begged Kirsty as she snuggled beside her sister in the big bed they shared. Tell me a fairy tale. Anna Marie smiled and wrapped her arms around her little sister in the dark. All Danish children grew up familiar with fairy tales. Hans Christian Andersen, the most famous of the tale tellers, had been Danish himself. Do you want the one about the little mermaid? That one had always been Anna Marie's favorite. But Kirsty said no. Tell one that starts with a king and a queen. And they have a beautiful daughter. All right, once upon a time there was a king, Anna Marie began. And a queen. Don't forget the queen. And a queen. They lived together in a wonderful palace, and was the palace named Amalienborg? Kirsty asked sleepily. Shh, don't keep interrupting or I'll never finish the story. No, it wasn't Amalienborg. It was a pretend palace. Anna Marie talked on, making up a story of a king and a queen and their beautiful daughter, Princess Kirsten. She sprinkled her tale with formal balls, fabulous gold-trimmed gowns, and feasts of pink frosted cupcakes, and Kirsty's deep, even breathing told her that her sister was sound asleep. She stopped, waited for a moment, half expecting Kirsty to murmur, "Then what happened?" But Kirsty was still. Anna Marie's thoughts turned to the real king, Christian X, and the real palace, Amalienborg, where he lived in the center of Copenhagen. How the people of Denmark loved King Christian. He was not like fairy tale kings who seemed to stand on balconies giving orders to subjects, or who sat on golden thrones demanding to be entertained and looking for suitable husbands for their beautiful daughters. King Christian was a real human being, a man with a serious, kind face. She'd seen him often when she was younger. Each morning he'd come from the palace on his horse, Jubilee, and ridden alone through the streets of Copenhagen, greeting his people. Sometimes when Anna Marie was a little girl, her older sister Lisa had taken her to stand on the sidewalk so that she could wave to King Christian. Sometimes he'd wave back to the two of them and smiled. "Now you are special forever," Lisa told her once, "because you have been greeted by a king. Anna Marie turned her head on the pillow and stared through the partly open curtains into the dim September night, thinking of Lisa. Her solemn, lovely sister always made her sad. Wonder why her sister makes her sad. Do you think her sister was mean to her? Or maybe her sister has gone away. So she turned her thoughts again to the king, who was still alive, as Lisa was not. Lisa has died? She remembered a story that Papa had told her. Shortly after the war began, shortly after Denmark had surrendered and the soldiers had moved in overnight to take their places on the corners, one evening Papa had told her that earlier he was on an errand near his office, standing on the corner waiting to cross the street when King Christian came by on his morning ride. One of the German soldiers had turned suddenly and asked a question of a teenage boy nearby. "Who is that man who rides past here every morning on his horse?" the German soldier had asked. Papa said he'd smiled to himself, amused that the German soldier didn't know. He listened while the boy answered. "He is our king," the boy told the soldier. "He is the king of Denmark." "Where is his bodyguard?" the soldier asked. And do you know what the boy said? Papa had asked Anne Marie. She was sitting on his lap. She was little, then only 7. She shook her head and waited to hear the answer. The boy looked right at the soldier and he said, "All of Denmark is his bodyguard." Anna Marie had shivered. It sounded like a very brave answer. "Is it true, Papa?" she asked what the boy said. Papa thought for a moment. He always considered questions very carefully before he answered them. "Yes," he said at last, "it is true. Any Danish citizen would die for King Christian to protect him." "You too, Papa?" "Yes. And Mama?" "Mama too." Anna Marie shivered again. "Then I would too, Papa, if I had to." They sat silently for a moment. From across the room, Mama watched them. Anna Marie and Papa, and she smiled. Mama had been crocheting that evening 3 years ago, the lacy edging of a pillowcase, part of Lisa's trousseau. Her fingers moved rapidly, and I'm looking here on my chair, and this is like crocheting. You take string and you use a needle and you make it into designs. Her fingers moved rapidly, turning the thin white thread into an intricate narrow border. Lisa was a grown-up girl of 19, about to marry Peter Nielsen. When Lisa and Peter married, Mama said, Anna Marie and Kirsten would have a brother for the very first time. Now, if you remember Peter, we've mentioned Peter before. He was the one who brought the newspaper secretly to them. "Papa," Anna Marie had said finally into the silence, "sometimes I wonder why the king wasn't able to protect us. Why didn't he fight the Nazis so they wouldn't come into Denmark with their guns?" Papa sighed. "We are such a tiny country, and they are an enormous enemy. Our king was wise. He knew how few soldiers Denmark had. He knew that many, many Danish people would die if we fought." "Well, in Norway they fought," Anna Marie pointed out. Papa nodded. "They fought very fiercely in Norway. They had those huge mountains for the Norwegian soldiers to hide in. Even so, Norway was crushed." In her mind, Anna Marie had pictured Norway as she remembered it from a map at school, up above Denmark. Norway was pink on the school map. She imagined the pink strip of Norway crushed by a fist. "Are there German soldiers in Norway now, the same as here?" "Yes," Papa said. "In Holland too," Mama added, "and Belgium, and France." "But not in Sweden," Anna Maria announced, proud that she knew so much about the world. Sweden was blue on the map, and she had seen Sweden even though she'd never been there. Standing behind Uncle Henrik's house, north of Copenhagen, she had looked across the water, the part of the North Sea that was called Kattegat, to the land on the other side. That is Sweden, you are saying, Uncle Henrik had told her. You are looking across to another country. Papa had said, Sweden is still free. And the next picture I want to show you is a picture of right here. Let me see if I can get it. And if you look down here, you can see there's a red dot, and that is Copenhagen, and it is just right across the water from Sweden, very close. Okay, continuing. And now 3 years later, it was still true, but much else had changed. King Christian was getting old, and he'd been badly injured last year in a fall from his horse. Faithful old Jubilee, who had carried him around Copenhagen so many mornings. For days they thought he would die, and all of Denmark had mourned. But he hadn't. King Christian X was still alive. It was Lisa, her sister, who was not. It was her tall, beautiful sister who had died in an accident 2 weeks before her wedding. In the blue carved trunk in the corner of this bedroom, Anna-Marie could see its shape even in the dark. There were folded Lisa's pillowcases with their crocheted edges, her wedding dress with its hand-embroidered neckline unworn, and the yellow dress she had worn and danced in with its full skirt flying at the party celebrating her engagement to Peter. Mama and Papa never spoke of Lisa. They never opened the trunk, but Anna-Marie did from time to time when she was alone in the apartment. Alone, she touched Lisa's things gently, remembering her quiet, soft-spoken sister who had looked forward to marriage and having children of her own. Red-headed Peter, her sister's fiancé, had not married anyone in the years since Lisa's death. He had changed a great deal. Once he had been like a fun-loving older brother to Anna-Marie and Kirsty, teasing and tickling, always a source of foolishness and pranks. Now he still stopped by the apartment often, and his greetings to the girls were warm and smiling, but he was usually in a hurry, talking quickly to Mama and Papa about things Anna-Marie didn't understand. He no longer sang the silly songs that had once made Anna-Marie and Kirsty shriek with laughter, and he never lingered anymore. Papa had changed too. He seemed older, tired, defeated. The whole world had changed. Only the fairy tales remained the same. And they lived happily ever after, Anna-Marie recited, whispering into the dark, completing the tale for her sister who slept beside her, one thumb in her mouth. Well, that's the end of chapter 2. Next will be chapter 3, and it is another question. Where is Mrs. Hirsch? We don't even know who Mrs. Hirsch is. But let's answer the question of chapter 2, which is, who is the man who rides past? Were you right about how he was riding? Had you thought about a horse? So who is the man who's riding the horse? The king, and his name is Christian X. So the next time we will read chapter 3.